So Scott, this is the tasting room. Something tells me there's a story behind the design and architecture here as well.
Well, it's a very old building. It was built in 1915, originally to be the Farmers Cooperative Creamery. All the local dairy farmers would bring their milk here, and it was turned into a brand of butter called Carlton Rose Butter.
Wow.
And then they moved to McMinnville, and then this building became part of the Madsen Grain Company, which owned this grain elevator next door, the building across the street that's now our winery, and this building. And this was a feed and seed store and offices and stuff for the grain company.
And what about looking at this corrugated roof and bits and pieces of letter? Something tells me there's a reason this is here. There's a method to the madness.
Yeah, this is the actual siding that was on our winery building across the street when it was a grain elevator, and we salvaged it and tried to keep as much of all the original materials as we could when we redid these buildings. So the ceiling is the original siding that was over there. A lot of this lumber was recycled from the original buildings.
Wow.
This tasting bar, there's actual railroad tracks holding up the bar. There's
no kidding.
A railroad that ran right behind the building.
Fantastic.
We try to incorporate all the indigenous stuff into the building here.
That's great. And I noticed the painting there before we get into the wine. Of course, that's the painting that inspired the Scott Paul logo.
Yeah.
Maybe tell us a little bit about the painting.
The painting is called Rabbit Receiving His Own Information, and it's by an artist named Cody Bustamante, who it turns out is from Oregon. We didn't know that when we bought the painting. My wife and I bought it when we were living in LA and deciding to leave LA behind and start the winery. And the message of the painting is supposed to be that sometimes people need to be forced to be still long enough to sort of listen to themselves and channel their own inner wisdom, as it were, and figure out what they're supposed to be doing with their lives, what path they're supposed to be on. And about the same time we bought that painting, I got really sick. I was wrestling with, am I going to leave the music business? Am I going to start the winery? And once I decided, no, I'm definitely going to go start the winery, I amazingly got better.
Yeah.
The doctors couldn't find anything wrong. It was just stress. Yeah.
Right.
And so we were telling that to the lady we bought the painting from, and she goes, oh, of course, that's the message of the painting, and blah, 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 blah.
No kidding.
To make a long story short, we move up here, start the winery, do the whole thing. Turns out the artist is from here. We brought the painting back home.
A lot of connection.
Yeah, so there was a very serendipitous thing. So when we designed our logo, we had an artist come take a look at the painting, change it a little bit, turn it into what is now the logo that you see on our bottles.
Well, I have two thoughts to that. One is that wine relieves stress. I think we've established that. And
this is true.
I got to tell you, Scott, I'm glad you stumbled across that painting and got that message, because from what I've tasted, you obviously belong making wine. So,
thanks.
On that note, why don't we try some?
Juice?
Yeah. Tell me what we're going to have a taste of here.
Well, we generally, every vintage, make 3 different Pinot Noirs. I'll pour 2 of them for you today. The first one is the one we call Cuvée Martha Peary. It's named after my wife and my daughter.
Oh, nice.
My wife is Martha, my daughter's Peary. And
Great.
So I killed a couple birds with one stone there.
There you go.
And this is usually the wine that we make. It's a selection we make in the cellar from our younger vines, generally speaking, and the wines from each vintage that maybe don't have the depth and the complexity and the length of the better stuff. Stuff that shows well younger, it's a little simpler, a little more approachable when it's young. So we bottle it earlier, release it earlier than the other wines.
Drink it now.
Yeah, drink it now over the first 3 to 5 years. It's not a wine to really hang on to long term.
Okay.
Although 10-year-old versions of it are still drinking pretty nicely. But so this is the 2007 Cuvée Martha Peary, which is sourced from 4 different vineyards.
Okay.
Shea, Stoller, Ribbon Ridge, and Mumtazi from 4 different parts of the valley, and all younger vines being under 15 years of age.
When was it released?
This was released last fall.
Okay.
Yeah, so just about almost a year now. We're coming to the end of the vintage.
Beautiful, nice light, vibrant color. Very pretty nose.
Thank you. People say that.
Yeah, I was going to say. Do you have any work done, or is it
all natural?
Wow, just a light, elegant strawberries. I mean, just beautiful Pinot Noir.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, a lot of red fruits is what I find in that wine. A lot of strawberry, raspberry kind of thing. And just pretty elegant, simple, lovely, silky texture.
Now I'm going to say something, and you can correct me and school me or whatever, but with Pinot Noir, I find, I've tried a lot of Santa Barbara Pinots, Russian River, Sonoma Coast, and Oregon, and I find I seem to enjoy, and this is a broad statement, there's certainly exceptions to it, but I seem to enjoy the cooler, like Sonoma Coast. To me, the Sonoma Coast and Oregon Pinots actually taste cooler. I feel like I'm having a drink from a forest. It's just nice and cool and clean.
Yeah.
Sometimes the Santa Barbara Pinots they feel they're just too big and warm and kind of. Is there any logic to what I'm saying, or
yeah, very much so. I mean, to generalize broadly, Pinot Noir needs to be grown in a climate where there's a lot of sunlight and a lot of warmth, but not a lot of heat. It doesn't like a lot of heat. And
right.
Russian River Valley and parts of Santa Barbara, San Ynez, very hot. I mean, they have about 100+ degree days there. Whereas in the true Sonoma Coast, in Burgundy's Côte d'Or, here in the Willamette Valley, it's pretty rare for us to get days over 90. We have these long, warm, sunny days all summer long, cool nights, but never a lot of heat. So the heat accumulation over the course of the year is not that much, and you don't get this big, ripe, jammy fruit that you would get from warmer areas.
Right.
And to me, the heart and soul of Pinot Noir is elegance, it's finesse. Wine that's a little subtle, wine that seduces you a little bit.
Sure.
And you need to be in the true cool climate to get that, I think. But not to say that happens every year here in Oregon, but we have the potential to do it here more often than most other places.
I mean, it seems, and you of all people who are a Burgundian expert, or certainly someone who knows a lot about Burgundy, would you say that you chose Oregon as a site for growing Pinot because it's most like Burgundy, the climate in Burgundy?
Climatically, yeah, very much so. There's only 2 places on the planet that I've come to see where you can really produce Pinot Noir at its highest expression of that style, and one would be Burgundy and one would be here. Now that said, Oregon and Burgundy are very, very different because the soils are dramatically different. They're growing pretty much entirely on limestone there in Burgundy, and we have no limestone here. We're growing in either volcanic soils or sedimentary soils, but there's no limestone. So as a result, the wines taste and are structured very differently, even though it's the same grape, tended the same way, made the same way, and grown in the same climate, essentially. But
right.
So that's the big difference.
Well, let's take a taste of the second one.
And the next wine would be the wine we call La Paulée, which is named after the traditional harvest celebration in Burgundy. La Paulée is it goes back about 1,000 years or so. On the last day of harvest, you would throw a big party for your pickers and all your crew.
Nice.
And that party's called La Paulée. And now it's mutated and become this big, huge celebration that happens the 3rd weekend in November every year in Burgundy, where about 500...
Note to self, might want to go to Burgundy on the 3rd week of November.
I'm there every year. About 500 of the top winemakers get together, and they each bring, half a dozen or a dozen great old bottles from their cellars going back to the 20s, the 40s, the 50s, and have a lunch that starts at noon. You get out of there about 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and you drink 100 Grand Cru Burgundies over the course of the day.
So you travel to Burgundy every year to do this?
Yeah, it's part of the job.
For work?
Yeah.
It's a rough job you got there, Scott. This one feels like it's a little bit darker. If I'm not mistaken, it still has a nice lightness to it and a nice vibrance to it, but it seems like there's a little more color, a little darker.
It's 2006, which was a warmer year and a riper year, and as a result, probably a little more color. We don't do anything to manipulate or try and affect the color in any way, shape, or form. Pinot Noir, most people don't know this, naturally lacks one color chromosome that every other red wine varietal has, so it's just by nature always going to be lighter in color.
Okay.
You can do stuff in the winery to try and mess with the color and make it darker. We just let it be.
Yeah, why would you?
There are people who just think a great wine has to be black.
Right.
I love the beauty of the clear, crystal clear ruby that Pinot is just on its own. It's a beautiful thing. So this wine is from older vines and from the better parcels of a few different vineyards. Again, it's a selection we make in the cellar. I generally don't do single vineyard wines to speak of. I go through the cellar and we taste barrel by barrel and find stuff that we think is showing better than others or of different characteristics. And for the La Paulée wine, we're looking for the stuff that's the most complex, the best concentration, the most length, and the overall best representation of the vintage. So we try several different lots and different combinations until we come up with the blend for the La Paulée.
Well, this is the wine that introduced me to Scott Paul, so I'm excited to meet it again.
Cool. Yeah, it's the wine that we make the most of. It's in the broadest distribution. It's the wine you would find at restaurants and some retail shops around the country. The
nose is definitely more substantial. There's it seems like bigger fruit, maybe a little layer of spice or something underneath. There's a lot more going on.
It's a combination of older vines and again, it's a different vintage at 2006, which is more robust, more lush fruit, richer fruit textures.
Wow, and on the palate, it's also more substantial. Just feels heavier on my tongue in a good way. It's just nice, lush fruit, and it goes on. There's a nice finish that just
Cool.
doesn't want to stop.
That's, again, that's what I was talking about. The stuff we select for La Paula should be longer, more complex, more concentration, more richness to it, just more levels of everything.
Wow.